Behind me, the screen showed deployment timelines and server moves, but all I heard was my phone buzzing nonstop. I was mid-sentence, walking the executive team through a security rollout, when the vibrations stacked 3, 4, 5 in a high row. I paused. I never stop a presentation, especially not one this big, but my gut twisted. I said, "Give me one moment," and stepped into the hall. I unlocked my phone and stared. The first text was from my mother. "You're not invited. Seren doesn't want you there." I blinked, thinking I read it wrong. Another text arrived like, "A cue. There's been a change of plans. Seren feels you've been making the wedding about yourself. Caleb's parents offered to help, but they asked for a drama-free day." My hands shook. I scrolled. "Please don't overreact. She just wants it perfect. We hope you understand. Understand?" After I covered the venue deposit, the catering, the photographer, the rentals over $98,000, each transfer sent from my account with a quiet hope that maybe it would bring us closer. And now I was being erased from the day I'd made possible. Pressure built behind my eyes. I texted my mom one word. "Why?" Her typing bubble blinked, then disappeared. I walked back in and finished the briefing on autopilot. No one asked. Maybe they saw. No one said a word. That night, I sat on my couch, the messages open, my jaw locked. I wasn't just left out, I was tossed aside. And for the first time in my life, something in me didn't shrink. It burned. In our house on Rosewood Street, roles weren't assigned, they just formed. Seren got the sparkle, I got the clipboard. When the pipes burst in a freeze, I Googled emergency plumbers while Mom paced. When Dad forgot the electric bill, I called the utility company and set a plan. I was 12. "Serene's still figuring herself out," Mom would say when I pointed out the imbalance. "You've always just known what to do." I wore competence like armor, even when it pinched. Serene drifted through school on charm and late passes. I stayed up fixing essays, color-coding notes, building systems from nothing. She twirled through cheer practice. I volunteered at science fairs and filed FAFSA alone. When I graduated valedictorian, everyone looked relieved, not surprised. I left for college in Seattle with 2 duffels and a promise to myself. I would never rely on anyone the way everyone relied on me. 4 years later, I crossed the stage summa cum laude with a job offer already waiting. I worked late, saved hard, and lived in a studio with thin walls while others popped champagne after their first checks. When our startup sold, I woke up a millionaire. No announcement, no luxury car, just a quiet balance and the first breath of real space. Then the calls began. Dad's car died, Mom's hours got cut. Seren's lease ended badly. I helped every time, not because they asked, but because I'd been trained to anticipate the ask before it arrived. So when Seren got engaged, paying for the wedding felt like another unspoken rule. It started with a midnight call. Talia. He proposed on a boat at sunset. It was perfect. I was groggy but happy. She wanted a small wedding, intimate, charming. Then she mentioned the Griffin Estate, a venue I knew started at $50,000 for basics. "Don't worry," she rushed. "Caleb's parents might help, and I know Mom and Dad can't do much, but we'll figure it out. Maybe you could help with some small stuff." I said yes without asking for details. I always said yes. 2 weeks later, she slid a spreadsheet across our brunch table. It was color-coded and terrifying. Total budget, $120,000. Small stuff meant the venue deposit, photographer, catering, and a dozen essentials. "We're waiting to hear from Caleb's parents," she said, eyes soft with practiced helplessness. "They're not fully on board yet." By the time I realized "we'll figure it out" meant "you'll figure it out," I'd already paid the Griffin Estate deposit and the first catering invoice. The calls kept coming, the florist needed a rush payment, the dress she loved was being discontinued. The band Caleb loved had a last-minute opening if we moved fast. Every time it sounded like an emergency only I could solve. I made spreadsheets, tracked receipts, and told myself that after the wedding, I'd breathe. I believed they'd remember I made it happen, but somewhere between the 3rd invoice and the 5th urgent transfer, I stopped being a sister and turned into a silent business partner, Never in the photos, always paying the bills. When I finally asked what Caleb's family was contributing, Seren hesitated. They're unsure. Maybe later. It's a stressful time. Not too stressful for their spa retreat for her bachelorette. It started small, a group chat I wasn't added to, a florist meeting booked during my quarterly review, a cake tasting I learned about from a tag on Serene's story. Each time I asked, she had a reason. I didn't think you'd be free. I figured Mom could go. It was super last minute. I wanted to believe her, but the pattern set. I was funding choices I wasn't invited to make. I kept showing up anyway, moved meetings, took early trains, tried to wedge myself back into a process that had left me behind. One afternoon, I dropped printed contracts at a boutique hotel near Seren's place. I stopped for coffee and saw her 2 tables away with her maid of honor, Kendra. I froze when I heard my name. She's being such a control freak, Seren said, not even lowering her voice. Just because she's paying doesn't mean it's her wedding. Kendra sipped her latte. Yeah, but at least you're not going into debt. Seren laughed a little. Small price to pay for her spreadsheets and passive-aggressive comments. I just wish she'd send the money and stay out of it. I backed, away before they saw me, hands shaking. That night, I stared at the color-coded budget I'd built, suddenly unsure who I built it for. I thought I was being helpful. Turns out showing up was the problem. The next week, it got worse. During Monday stand-up, buried between Slack pings and deploy alerts, a cousin from Caleb's side texted me, "Hey, sorry you're not coming. Hopes you feel better." I frowned. Then another. Seren said you've been having episodes. I didn't know things were that bad. My hands went cold. Episodes. On my break, I called my mom. She answered, already braced. "Talia, I was going to call you tonight." "What did she tell them?" I asked. Silence. "She just said you've been overwhelmed. That stress is affecting your behavior." "Overwhelmed?" I said flatly. So instead of saying I paid for 90% of her wedding while being ignored and insulted, she told Caleb's family, "I'm unstable." "She didn't mean it like that," Mom said softly. "Caleb's parents are finally warming up. She's afraid something will ruin it. Something like me." Silence. "I'm not the problem," I said mostly to myself. "The problem is she's been lying to everyone, including you, and you'd rather keep the fantasy." "Sweetheart, it's complicated." "No, it's actually not." I hung up. I stood at my desk, looking at my dim screen, and something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. They were never going to see me, not unless I stopped making it easy to disappear. The next morning, I did what none of them expected. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with cold tea and the glow of my laptop, surrounded by contracts, emails, and spreadsheets I knew by heart. I had receipts for everything: venue, catering, florals, photographer, rentals, 55 planning files, color-coded and constantly updated over 6 months. I opened a new document and typed 3 headers: pending payments, cancelable services, non-refundable. Then I went line by line and mapped every dollar. No anger, no tears, just precision. I started with the venue. The Griffin Estate contract allowed a partial refund if canceled more than 72 hours in advance. I called the coordinator, Susan. "Hi, this is Talia Rowan. I need to cancel." She paused. "May I ask why?" "I'm no longer attending the wedding I paid for. I can't keep supporting it." To her credit, she didn't push. She walked me through the cancellation, the refund, and offered a statement for taxes. Then, the florist, the DJ, the rental company, the bar staff. One by one, I reversed what I'd set in motion. Most vendors were kind. A few already knew. "You're not the first," the photographer said gently. "But you might be the bravest." By evening, I'd canceled everything I could. I moved partial refunds to my savings and logged off. Then I went to the shared planning folder, the one everyone had access to but almost no one used. I downloaded it all, backed it up, then deleted it from the cloud. Gone. Every seating chart, every quote, every sheet. I closed my laptop and exhaled. I hadn't realized how much space it all took, on my desk, in my head, in my chest. For the first time in months, I felt light. My phone rang. I didn't need to look. Seren. She started mid-scream. What is wrong with you? The venue called, the florist canceled, everything's falling apart and it's your fault. I didn't flinch. You made it clear I wasn't welcome. You're ruining my life because you're jealous. No, I said quietly. I'm taking mine back. You wanted a perfect wedding without me. Now you have neither. She sobbed and hung up. 5 minutes later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father, then a line of texts. I blocked them all. Not from anger, from self-preservation. I opened a browser and searched for cabins on the Washington coast. I found one, tucked in the trees near a beach I remembered from a road trip. No Wi-Fi, no service, just quiet. I booked a week, packed a duffel, and left before the city woke. No announcement, no explanation. By the time they noticed, I was already on the ferry, wind in my face, phone off, watching the shoreline slip away. There was no revenge in me, only space. As the boat cut toward the peninsula, something in my chest loosened, a coil unwinding after years. The cabin was smaller than I'd imagined. One room, a wood stove, a beat-up table that became my place. I left my laptop at home. My phone stayed off. The quiet wasn't empty. It was a kind of company I hadn't felt in years. Each morning, I walked damp trails that smelled like pine and moss. By day 2, I carried a journal. Not a work log or a plan. Blank pages where I wrote what I'd never said out loud. I wrote about the birthday Seren skipped, the nights I fixed Dad's taxes, the Christmas I paid for everyone's gifts and no one noticed, the feeling of being useful but never cherished, of being counted on but never counted in. By day 5, I found a waterfall at the end of a narrow path. I sat, tore each page into strips, and let them drift into the current. It felt childish and sacred at the same time. When I left, the pain came with me, but it was different. Sharper in shape, but mine now, on my terms. I booked a therapist before I unpacked. Dr. Kessler didn't ask for history first. She asked who I was when I wasn't fixing things for other people. It was the first question that made me cry. We started slow, patterns, boundaries, family myths. I showed up every week. I stopped justifying what I felt, stopped explaining who I was. The grief stayed, but it stopped running the room. When the holidays came, I didn't go back to Eugene. I made other plans. Spring arrived quietly. No big epiphany, just small choices that added up. I changed my email signature. I left the group text. I stopped answering questions that began with, "Can you just..." I rerouted all that fixer energy into things I chose: a coding scholarship for girls in rural schools, a monthly donation to a reforestation project in the Olympic Peninsula, the same woods that taught me to breathe again. It felt good to give without being expected to. My therapist called it emotional repurposing. She said I'd been my family's emergency contact so long, I forgot how to belong to myself. I spent Thanksgiving with coworkers who cooked from YouTube and laughed at burnt pies. On Christmas morning, I drank coffee in a house full of friends who passed board games instead of expectations. In session, we mapped my family roles. Emotional outsourcing, Dr. Kessler said. They made you the container. They poured their stress into you and called it closeness. I nodded. I'd always known. I just didn't have the words. We talked about guilt, too. How my parents taught me to feel responsible for everyone's comfort. How Seren's fragility became the axis of our house. Now I was choosing a new orbit, one that didn't require me to shrink. I stopped keeping tabs. I stopped decoding half-hearted texts. I let the silence stay. Then one January afternoon, a pale blue envelope arrived. No return address. My name in handwriting I hadn't seen since we were kids. The edges were soft like it had been carried for days. Inside was a plain card. No flowers, no script. Just Serene's small handwriting. I owe you an apology. Can we talk? No excuses, no spin, just that. I read it twice and set it on the windowsill. It sat there 3 days before I texted. Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. Grace and Finch Cafe. She replied, I'll be there. I got there early, ordered mint tea, and chose a table in the back. When Seren walked in, I barely knew her. No heels, no carefully waved hair. A gray sweater, no makeup, hair in a messy knot that didn't feel staged. I don't know where to start, she said. Her voice wasn't shaky. It was quiet. I waited. I've been in therapy since October, she said. Caleb and I are divorcing. He didn't do anything wrong. She paused. Exactly. I built my whole self around other people's approval. His, yours, Mom's. I listened. I told lies, she said. Big ones. About you. About your mental health. I was afraid his family wouldn't accept me. So I gave them a version of the truth where I wasn't the problem. And I let you carry the cost. Money, feelings, all of it. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just an ache softened by time. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I just want you to know I see it now. We sat a long time after. We didn't hug. We didn't plan the future. But when she asked if I wanted to see the program she was applying to, an early education certificate, I nodded. We weren't sisters again. Not yet. But we weren't strangers either. That was enough to begin. It's quiet now, but not empty. The dining table I built from reclaimed wood has 6 mismatched chairs. Tonight, each one is full. Friends pass dishes, trade stories, top off glasses. No one asks what I brought to earn my seat. They just make room. Across the room, Brian catches my eye and smiles. Not a look that asks for anything, just recognition. We met months ago at a tech meetup I almost skipped. He asked what I did outside work, and I didn't know how to answer. Now I do. I host. I mentor. I write. I live. After they leave, I wash dishes in warm water and soft light. On the shelf above the sink sits a small folded card, cream paper, ink a little smudged. I found it tucked inside a thank you note from a scholarship recipient last month. You were never the backup plan. You were the blueprint. I run my finger over the words and let them land. For years, I gave away my place at the table and called it love. Now I build my own. Every seat here was made with care, not apology.